Good morning and welcome to the Student Hub Live. Well, this is our careers special and we've selected 3 of the careers that you might be doing if you're an OU student. And what we're going to do is talk about those careers, talk about how we teach them. And we've got some of the careers advisors here and in the chat who are going to give you lots of helpful advice about both these qualifications and also advice more generally. My name's Karen Foley and I'll be hosting this show, and it's live, online and interactive. Our audience participate exclusively through the widgets that we've got coming up on your screen and also the chat. And those are all fed into our conversation through Sophie and HJ, who are on our hot desk. Now, there are a variety of ways that you can engage with us. So the watch and engage option, which I hope a lot of you are in, log in with your student details to that, and then you'll be able to see the chat, participate in the chat, and also see the video and widgets. If you aren't in that and you're in the live stream only, then there's also a chat function there, and we're going to try today to include some of that in the discussion as well. So feel free to type and chat along there as well. Anything goes. You might have a question, you might want to talk about how nervous you feel about your EMA that's coming up, you might want to talk about study options or what it's like to be an OU student, or cake. Anything goes in that chat option. So just feel free to talk to other people as part of our OU academic community. You can also tweet. Our hashtag is StudentHubLive17 and our handle is @StudentHub. And we've got an email box as well. So if there's a question that we don't cover and you'd like us to get back to you, then email us studenthub@open.ac.uk. Now, briefly, for those of you early birds who logged in, you'll have seen a little video about how to use the interface. But for those of you who haven't, you can change the layout in the watch and engage option. So the bottom right-hand screen, you can click and have a different layout there, depending on how large you want the chat to be. You can also pin the chat if it's moving too fast and you want to go back to something. And there's a little pin button at the top right-hand of that screen that you can click on and then move down. So we hope you find those useful. But let me introduce Sophie and HJ, who will be chatting with you in the chat and feeding all of your questions into the discussion. Sophie and HJ, how are you today?
Good morning. Yes, very excited. It feels like we've been here loads lately, which is really nice.
Yes.
So, yes, nice to see quite a few of you in the chat at the moment. So please introduce yourself, say hello, and any questions, put them through to us.
Yes, and the chat, apart from questions, is pretty much for everything. I think Mark's already got onto saying that he thought there would be punch and pie, but we might have to have a bit of a hunt round for that. But yeah, anything you want to chat about, any thoughts, comments, questions. And we've also got some experts from the career service, some educational advisors, and Kieran, who's a tutor in sports and fitness, joining us in the chat. So if you have any specific questions like that, there's lots of people who want to help you, and any question goes. Yes.
Oh, lovely. Well, thank you for that. So fill these widgets in for us then if you're in the watch and engage. We'd like to know where you are in the country, which level you're studying, how you're feeling today, and whether or not you've been to one of our events beforehand. That just gives us a feel about who's out there. Now, if you are having any technical difficulties, also we have a help tab. So if you'd like HJ or Sophie to try and help you with anything technical, like how to engage with us, then do put a question in there, and that should hopefully mean that we can answer and respond to that. But let's see what we've got lined up today. The first session we're looking at is the BSc Sports Fitness Coaching, and I'm joined by Jess Pinchbeck, Karen Howes and Ros Johnson, who I'll introduce in just a second. In the middle of the show, we're looking at business and leadership. We have Maria Da Silva and Owain Slavmic-Jones, and then we're going to take a look at criminology last at 11:20, and we have Deb Drake, Siobhan Flint and Steve Toombs taking us through that session. So 3 key qualifications here for you today, so do let us know the questions that you'd like to ask about those. Right, well, let me welcome you guys to the studio. Thank you for joining us today, and of course, some of you have been on before. We had an Olympic special earlier in the summer, wasn't it? And today we're going to be talking about the BSc Sports and Fitness Coaching. And I have Jess and Karen and Ros from the Careers Advisory Service with us. So, Jess, I wondered if you could start by talking about the team and, you know, who's involved, basically, because you're a really lovely and quite small and specialist team, but also there's a lot of diversity in terms of the areas that you're covering.
Yeah, so when you enrol on the sport and fitness modules, they are produced by a group of academics based here at Milton Keynes, and Karen is on the team with myself, among some of the others. And we all have a range of passions and interests in different areas of sport and fitness. So on the team we have psychologists, we have biomechanists, physiologists, we've got Olympic coaches, we've got people with a whole wealth of experience within the fitness industry. And these diverse interests and research areas are what make our is what really makes our modules, unique and really relevant to sport and fitness students. And so what we do is we try and use our expertise and our research to produce really lively and engaging module materials for the students. And we do this through written materials, such as some of the textbooks that you can see on the table in front here. And we also do this by making some bespoke AV resources for our modules. So, for example, 2 of our team have worked with Channel 4 on a production called Chasing Perfection. So if anybody's seen that, that was presented by Michael Johnson and featured athletes such as Sir Chris Hoy. And so within our modules, we draw upon certain aspects of AV to really bring our module materials to life for students. We've recently been to the English Institute of Sport and worked with the England women's hockey team to produce some exciting footage for one of our new modules. So we try and make things really lively and engaging for students.
And also, I guess, using, the academic knowledge to actually, generate things that are going to help athletes in the real world.
Yeah, Karen is an applied sports psychologist, as is Caroline Heaney, our programme leader. Ben Langdown, who has just joined us from the PGA, does a lot of work with youth level golfers in strength and conditioning. So there's a real mix of expertise within the team.
Excellent. And of course, lots of ALs, the associate lecturers who teach students. So the students basically who are studying this sort of thing, because some students may be studying sports fitness, some may be interested in, and some may not know anything about the OU or how to study. They get these books and then they have this tutor who again, will be an expert in their field. And they'll have these and then they'll use some of the stuff on the VLE, the virtual learning environment as well. So you've mentioned some of the innovative things that you do there.
Yes, so some of our modules are purely online, so everything is done online, including the study materials, and sometimes you will get hard copy books as well. So it depends which module you pick as to the amount that's online and the different things that you will use. We've also created a new module at level 1 where students get issued a fitness tracker, so something like this device here. So students will be using a fitness tracker throughout the module and looking at their own data and comparing that to other students on the module as well. So we try and make things exciting and obviously developing skills that they will use in real life. Most personal trainers now will use fitness trackers and devices with their clients. So it's really trying to make it industry relevant.
So the students must all be pretty fit. Do they all have a really genuine interest then in sports and exercise?
Well, the beauty of our qualification is that you don't have to be really fit to be able to do it. It's for those who are working in sport and fitness, but also for those that just have an interest in sport and fitness or, want to gain knowledge for their own development, or if they're a spectator or they just have a general interest. So you don't have to be working in sport and fitness and you don't have to be, super fit and healthy yourself to do the module.
OK. Shall we have a look at the structure then of the degree?
OK.
Lovely. OK, so we're going to show you a slide on screen now so you can have a look at what the actual physical degree structure looks like. Get that for you in just 1 second. I mean, broadly speaking, there are these 3 levels to the degree, as there are with all degrees. And I guess just before we go into that slide, more broadly, we've got the options at level 1, 2, and 3. But this degree is a little bit more constrained in terms of some of the choices that students have. So whereas if you're doing something very broad, you could go off and maybe do a bit of history or classics or this, that, and the other. There are a few levels. So level 1, 2, and 3, which obviously have the sort of key skills in terms of being descriptive, slightly more evaluative, and then slightly more applied, I guess, towards the end of the module. Broadly speaking then, what are some of the skills and stages that we have at each level? So if you could talk us maybe through the sort of things that might happen at level 1.
Yeah, so level 1 really is for building students' confidence in terms of academic and employability skills, really. So we don't expect students to come to level 1 with everything in place and be able to write a perfect essay, referenced perfectly. What we do is we're looking to develop confidence and develop these skills as we move through the module, and that's where the tutors are key. We have some excellent tutors within sport and fitness, and as well as working within activities in the module materials to help and guide students, the tutors through their feedback and through their tutorials will really look to work with the students and develop these academic skills. So it's a good place to start. It's building confidence and just really developing those academic skills in the early stages.
Excellent. And what about level 2 then? This is a bit more about physiology and psychology. So these might be things, Karen.
Yeah, well, in the same way that we appreciate that the students have very different interests coming in, that first year is very much about introducing them to sport and fitness. That as they come into the second year, we start to look in more specialist areas. So as you say, the psychology, the physiology, we go into more depth in those. We really try and bring those areas to life. So we use case studies, a lot of AV, students engage with the AV, look at them as a case study, talk about them, relate it to the theory. So the content is very far more specialised than level 1. And in terms of the skills they're developing, they're being introduced to perhaps more academic sources, looking at where to find them, and really to engage with that, whilst at the same time having that AV and the bringing it to life.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's building on those skills from level 1, but putting it in a more specialised context, really.
Brilliant. And then level 3 then is more theory driven, but this is quite interesting because students get to specialise now, don't they?
Yeah, this really is the first opportunity that the students can choose what they want to specialise in and what area they want to look at. So in terms of their academic skills as well, we encourage them to go outside the module materials. We give them or we try and develop in them the skills to look elsewhere, to look at different sources. So they draw on media sources, but they also draw on the academic sources and learn to really critically analyse them, look at them in with a little bit of a more critical view. But they can do this in an area that they're interested in. So I'm module chair on one of the level 3 modules, and the students can choose from around about 10 different contemporary topics that they want to look at. So there are some that draw on psychology and sociology, such as body image or homophobia in sport. But there are other areas, so if they're a little bit more interested in the physiology, they might look at HIIT. If they're a little bit more interested in sleep, they could look at sleep, they could look at pain. So they can identify certain areas and explore that in more depth. So really, we've got a progression from level 1, where it's very general, into level 2, where we introduce them to some specific areas, and then they can bring in their own interests within a kind of contemporary framework at level 3.
That's fabulous, because it's so rare, especially in an undergraduate degree, to have that level of choice, because normally one would specialise postgraduate. And I guess this isn't really specialisation, it's more about doing something that really applies to you, but also to be able to do something in such detail is really, really unique.
I think as well, if I just all throughout our assessments, so in level 1 and level 2, what we try and do is give students choice. So sometimes within the module materials, there's options that they can study. So, if students want to be fitness instructors, they will do maybe a different reading or a different activity to those students that want to become sports coaches or PE teachers. So we try and build that into our module materials, because we know we're catering for students with, quite diverse interests. And also what we try and do with our assessment is to let students pitch their assessment towards their own activity of their choice. So it might be looking at how we develop certain components of fitness, but we let them pick the activity. So if they're interested in football, or if they're interested in netball or endurance running, they can pick their own athlete that they want to apply the theory to. So it makes it just more interesting, and students become more passionate about their assignment if they're focusing it on something that they're really interested in.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you. Let's take a quick trip to the hot desk. Stuart Geddes, the help tab is for people who have genuine technical problems, not burnt toast. Sophie and HJ, how's everything going?
Very well, yes. We do have, there's a quick comment from Kieran, our sports lecturer, who popped up by. He's popped off, but he's left a really lovely message. But he said, before I go, I want to say that UU has a great sports and fitness department. I have studied at several universities, and the quality of the teaching materials is amazing and unparalleled in quality, in my opinion. Also, also, the opportunity to explore employment-based qualifications is very unique and not common in university degrees, but is at the OU. The advantage of a sports degree is that it crosses the boundaries between science and arts. I think that's a lovely comment to sum it up. Very supportive of the department. But Dee actually has a great question that you might be able to help us with. Dee's wondering whether to keep on the BSc Health Science or move to BSc Psychology or Counselling. Maybe you got some advice about choosing modules in general, or...
Very good question. Yes, module choice, and in particular with the OU, because we do allow students to make changes at any point. And I guess you guys wouldn't be specialists in that, but Dee, you might want to pop along later because we have some sessions from the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences where we're talking specifically about some of those modules, so that might give you an idea about choice. But motivation, choice, decision making, these are all areas that come into sports very broadly. Any advice that you guys would have more generally about how students might choose the right pathway for them?
I think something that's quite unique within us as a team is a lot of us have actually completed OU qualifications ourselves, so we know what it's like to be an OU student. Personally, my advice would be just pick something that you have a real genuine interest and passion in, because that's half the battle. If you're studying something that you're truly interested and engaged with, then I think that's 50% of it already there.
No, absolutely.
And certainly on the sport fitness and coaching degree at the moment, that we don't have choice. So if there are 2 modules at level 1, 2 at level 2 and 2 at level 3. So if they're enrolled on that qualification, then those are the modules that they will take. But within there, as Jess has already said, that there's lots of choice. But obviously, as I'm sure you'll talk about later, there are opportunities for students to take 1 or 2 of our modules in a wider open degree. But certainly within the degree, as it stands, we don't yet have any choice.
I think as well, our sport and fitness students find it really useful to speak to other students. So we have like induction forums and we have career forums throughout the year where students across different levels can talk to each other, and say, this is a great module, this assessment was really good. So perhaps my advice would be to try and find some students that are doing that particular pathway and have a chat to them and see, make your decision based upon some other student input as well.
Yeah, and also, Dee, ask people in the chat, because we've got a lot of people from STEM and FAS in the chat today, as well as various other levels, and a lot of people at level 1. So you might all have some advice for Dee that you can contribute in the chat. But I guess, Ros, we must introduce you at this point, because whilst you are aligned very specifically with this particular qualification, you're also a careers advisor more generally. And so you must get students coming to you a lot of the time saying, I really don't know both what to do with my career and also then how my qualification and pathway are going to support that.
Absolutely. And certainly we have sports students coming to us who think that they're doing that qualification because they have a particular career in mind, but in fact perhaps they have their eyes opened whilst they're doing the qualification and actually think more broadly and come and say, what can I do with this degree? And there's lots and lots of careers that they could go into. They could choose to do something that's fitness instruction or sport coaching, or indeed PE teaching, as we talked about. But there might be other things that they are interested in. Or it might be something that's not sport related at all, but the degree that they've got and the fantastic employability skills that they've developed during their degree will help them move across into maybe something within the financial sector, or it might be marketing. They might move into something marketing to do with sport. So yes, people often come and say, what can I do with my degree? And that goes for every subject.
If I could just add to that, one of the things that we do in the modules is build those employability skills. So, for example, in the 3rd year, they give their first presentation. Now, it doesn't matter what career you're going into. Now, obviously, we're looking at it in a fitness or sort of fitness instructor or coaching context. But it doesn't matter what career you go into. At some point, you're going to have to stand up in front of somebody and present the material, whether it's sport related or whether it's fitness related or whether it's management. So even though we've got that sport and fitness context, we're developing those skills and as with everything that we put together, it's progressive from level 1, level 2, level 3, with a slightly different focus at each level.
And that's absolutely key for employability, because it's not just the knowledge that you've got from your degree, but it's how you present yourself, and it's the skills that you can bring in from your degree, but from the rest of life. Other things you do outside, which are going to be really the keys to getting that job that you want. So yeah, it's great that timekeeping and I think independence are part of your course, aren't they? And they're key skills that employers are going to be looking for.
Well, we asked people what sorts of jobs they thought would be useful to come out of this degree or even jobs that they're interested in going into. And we do have a whole range of students here who are after a lot of different sessions, but some of the things that have come up are things like a fitness lecturer, research, which I thought was a great one, teaching, personal trainer, coaching. So all of the things that I think we would very much expect. This must be one of the qualifications that is slightly more vocational in terms of the sense that it's unlikely that you would do a sport and fitness degree if you just wanted to be in personal finance, for example, or do something sort of more, more broad, whereas some other degrees are useful to have a degree. And of course, all degrees are useful to demonstrate these key skills that you've talked about, and they do teach us more than the qualification. But I guess there's some element of passion here and wanting to actually work in this field.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and particularly with the qualification, we have a unique module at level 2, and this is where the vocational element really comes in, because to pass one of the level 2 modules, students have to gain a level 2 external coaching or fitness instructing qualification. So that really develops their employability skills, because they come through the module, being a qualified sports coach in a particular sport or a qualified fitness instructor. So that's really useful, and therefore it demonstrates that they have the skills and abilities to lead a fitness session or to lead a coaching session, which is obviously key for employers working in the sport and fitness industry.
And I guess something that might be difficult to do on your own on the kitchen table, just in isolation. How important then is community and sort of tapping into all of these practitioners, the module teams, the ALs, and these various other things that you set up for students?
Yeah, I mean, our ALs really complement. We've talked about the expertise of us as a central module team, but to be honest, our ALs really complement that, and they have a whole wealth of industry experience. And when we come to produce modules, often we have ALs that come in and act as consultants if they have particular areas of expertise. So we look at developing the employability skills there. And the tutors, I always say, are on the front line. So they're the ones with the students, that have the day-to-day contact with the students, and often they're a wealth of knowledge. So our students do tap into the knowledge that their tutors have, and they give lots of advice and guidance, as well as directing them to ROS when they need to.
Yeah, because you've had a careers forum, and the careers service often have these forums as specialist places where students can go and post questions. What came out of the most recent one that you did?
Well, it was an interesting forum, and all the classics came up, which we expected in terms of PE teaching and coaching. But there were other career areas that came up. There were things like clinical exercise physiology. And of course, some of those career areas need additional industry-specific courses on top of their degree. Or it may be that people need to go and do a master's programme. And so there were questions around postgraduate study and where to go and how to access that, how to put an application together, what was going to be the most appropriate course, or whether in fact people could tap into industry-specific qualifications through their own work. And many students have already got that, and so they were talking to each other on the forum about that and where they might access those extra qualifications. A lot of that, of course, is also around their networks, and you alluded already to the fact that students have got very good ALs, and we would strongly encourage them to use the networks that they build up during their degree with each other, in their work, in their placement, in their coaching qualification, but also with their ALs, and to keep those relationships warm, because they will be useful to them in working out where they're going to move on to next.
And I guess a lot of ALs, because you do build up a good relationship with your students, and like you say, they're very diverse. So it would be very common, I guess, for students to maybe say, could I keep in touch with you and email them the next year if they've got specific questions.
Just building on that, the final module that the students do, we allocate them a specialist tutor in the area that is of their choice. So in terms of keeping those networks going in terms of the topic area that's of interest to them, they're allocated to a tutor who has some either industry knowledge or specialist knowledge in terms of their research or their background in that particular area. So whilst they've had their tutors all the way through the degree, at the end they then start to engage with somebody who has far more specialist knowledge on that topic. So that gives further opportunities for that building of that networking.
Yeah.
Something we're trying to develop as well is the visibility of us as central academics. So trying to be more involved within the modules so students know who we are. So audio-visual material within the modules sort of featuring us so they get to know a bit about us and our backgrounds. We're very active on social media. So we have a sport and fitness blog where we maybe react to contemporary issues within the news and post our academic perspectives on things. So we get quite a lot of interaction with students and ALs there. So just developing this community. So we have the OU Sport and Fitness Twitter, which our students are really active on, and we get some good discussion going there. And recently we've held a Contemporary Issues in Sport conference, which was open to students. So students very rarely get the opportunity to come and talk to us face to face, and it was fantastic. We had some level 3 students there, and they came and they were able to meet us and talk about things in the module materials that they really liked, things that they didn't like so much, and how we could look to develop and change. So watch this space, because we're trying to do more and more stuff where they can come and meet us as central academics as well as their ALs.
Brilliant. And we've got links to the blogs which are on the resources pages of the website, so do check those out. Blogging is a really nice, accessible way to have bite-sized chunks of information and to pick up these topical issues as well. And you mentioned that students really love it. How do they get involved? Do they feedback comments on it?
Yeah, comments, or either actually at the bottom of the blog or Twitter feed, or we have a sport and fitness research page where all our email addresses are on it. So sometimes students might contact us by email to ask us particular questions about something that we've written.
Excellent.
And recently we've had a student who's contributed to the blog in terms of his experiences. So although that's not a regular occurrence, we can get the student's story through that blog as well.
Excellent, that's really lovely. Okay, now I wanted to sort of go back to this idea of the skills, because we've talked a little bit about some of the areas that people might study, and we started talking a little bit about some of the skills that we were developing throughout the levels as well. And we also made this point that, you know, again, you are generating a lot of skills that have employability value, so the presentation, etc. And time management was one that we mentioned earlier as well. And we asked people what skills they were most sought after in terms of employment. So if you haven't filled that in yet, do click on that button to select the widgets, and for these ones that are word clouds, you need 3 things. So if you can't think of 3 things, that's okay, but just put a full stop at the end, and then you can submit it to send your results, and we'll take a look at that in a little minute. But talking about the skills then, at level 1, you'd mentioned the time management and communication and confidence issues, and then, you know, at level 2 you've got the EXCF, coaching and fitness instruction, and then the independence at level 3. Translating these then into employability aspects, Roz, how might students begin to recognise some of the areas that they're developing? Sometimes you're in the thick of it and you think, oh, I have this presentation to do or whatever, and you don't sort of realise, hey, actually, that's a great thing to put on my CV. I've done X or Y or Z, or I can manage my time and I've submitted these, I've met my deadlines, etc. How do you encourage students to recognise and capitalise on some of these skills that they're picking up?
It's a really good question, because students, we find, really struggle to see the wood for the trees, really, when they're studying or working, and they don't always recognise that they've got the skills that they've got. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking to students, both in groups on OU Live sessions, but also one-to-one, if they come to us for individual consultation, about how to articulate what it is that they've got. And I think they go away very surprised at how much they can put on their CV about the things that they can offer to an employer, which are going to be really valuable. And they're not necessarily the obvious things. And they might be around their commercial awareness. That's always something that employers are looking for. Do they know how to operate in a commercial environment? And of course, a lot of them do, but they don't necessarily recognise that. But then other things like perhaps resilience, and their adaptability. And those things that they have in shed loads as an OU student, because of all the things that they're juggling at the same time, but they also have through their course. But it's finding ways to say that, and they find that difficult. So it's great when they come to us and we can begin to unpack some of those things with them, so that then they can translate them into application forms and into their CV and so on, to present really the whole picture of who they are to an employer.
Because, of course, as we said, you know, they're developing these skills from level 1, so it's not just on completion of the degree, all of a sudden you have these skills. Sure you do, but you're getting them, aren't you, as you're going through?
Yes, and students could do with noting, and it is a great thing to do, to actually keep a bit of a log, and we all talk about it, but not many people do it, to keep a bit of a log, really, of the skills that you are picking up as you go along. I don't know whether they do that within their degree in terms of...
It's interesting, actually, because we've just redesigned our level 1 module. So this is the introductory module that students come to, and what they do in there now is, as part of their assessment, they look at their academic skills and employability skills, right at the beginning of the module, and they look at which skills they're confident in and which they need work on. Then they revisit that again at the end of the module after all the activities and everything that they've done. So hopefully they'll be able to measure their progress, and we continue that throughout level 1. And level 2, they reflect upon their skills at each TMA, so each assignment that is, with their tutor, to start a dialogue with their tutor as to, you know, what they're excelling at and what they need to improve upon. So within the assessment, we've tried to build that in throughout, which hopefully by the time they get to the end of level 3 and they're filling out CVs and employability skills, it should be a little bit easier for them these days.
Yes, because it's really important that they plug those gaps whilst they're doing their degree, and they might be able to do that through getting some additional work experience or going and volunteering and doing some additional activity which perhaps they haven't had opportunity to do before.
So you're building a lot of these skills and opportunities to reflect on the skills into the production of the module and the assessment. But Ros, how often do students come to you? I mean, it's this cohort of students who are studying this particular qualification. Do they tend to come to you right at the beginning? When do students tend to approach the Careers Service for help and support?
Well, it's very mixed indeed. I mean, we would encourage them to come quite early on in their OU career, because at that point we can actually help them to build on what they're doing within their degree. And then they've got a bit of time before they graduate to plug the gaps, if there are gaps in their profile. So they do come at various stages. It's often when they feel a bit insecure, but because a lot of our students are working, it's also when perhaps they're changing jobs, or they've suddenly realised that they've studied something that they're really interested in, which they haven't even had their eyes open to before. And so they'll come at that point. So they come at various stages through their journey, and we would encourage that.
Excellent. Well, that's good to know. Right, I'd like to take a look at the widget that we asked you about at home. What are the most sought after skills in employment? So let's see what some of the things that came up were. Communication is a massive word that's coming through here. Work ethics, honesty and reliance, analytical ability, motivation, adaptability, independence, application skills, enthusiasm, resilience, so something you've mentioned there already, team playing, human interaction and knowledge. So lots of wonderful key skills there that you can see automatically how these might apply, but they're also very general, aren't they?
Well, if I can just jump in there, we're redesigning one of our first year modules, and a lot of those actually came up as some of the key themes that we're looking at. So communication, for example, not only are we looking at the students' communication skills, but they're reflecting on the communication skills of a fitness instructor or of a coach, so that they'll look at case studies of those individuals within the industry. So there is an engagement with what does communication look like in a positive way in the environment that I want to be in. So it's interesting that those things that came up in the word cloud, teamwork, leadership and communication and resilience, I suppose, in terms of self-awareness and reflection, those are all coming up in our level 1 module that we're rewriting at the moment.
Excellent. And Ros, what then are some of the sort of things that you might then help students with in terms of some of these key skills? You sort of spoke about commercial awareness earlier.
Yes, so students who perhaps are looking to go into something where they will be in a bit more of a commercial world, or they want to be self-employed, say, are going to have some kind of business nous and understanding. And so we might encourage them to look for a mentor who can help them to develop those skills and to find experiences that are going to offer them something extra. So we may look at that. We may just be looking at how they articulate the things that they're going to say, because they may think, well, yes, actually, I've got good communication skills. These skills are coming up, aren't they? Mm-hmm. I've got those, but they can't think of the examples to offer. So we might help them with that process. We may help them with job vacancies. We have a vacancy service within the Careers and Employability Service, and it may be that they want to access that, so that could be helpful.
We also talked briefly about changes over time, so things becoming more interesting. And I guess, like with any qualification, there are these trends. I'm just thinking around, competitions and sports funding and, various things that are more hot right now than others. How influential then are some of these trends in terms of students' abilities to practice some of those areas throughout their degree and also maybe go into them for a career?
I mean, they are key, aren't they? And I think students need to be very aware of the sports industry as a whole. And it may be their particular sport is something which is very heavily funded, and therefore there are going to be opportunities in those areas. Other areas of sport are perhaps underfunded, and so there will be less opportunities. And they need to get the picture of what the labour market looks like. Within their sector.
And of course there will be geographical differences as well.
Yes. And if they live in a very rural area, then they may well struggle to be working in particular careers. In a more urban area, then there'll be more opportunity and a broader base possibly of opportunity. Equally, they need to be able to travel perhaps. And so they need to think about their circumstances and whether they can drive, where they live, what their constraints are, and we will talk to them about those things in our one-to-many activities and in our one-to-one activities.
Lovely. I'd like to just look into the future to sort of conclude the session, and I'm hoping that we can show one of the apps that you've been developing as part of your virtual reality and some of the module materials that we can have a look at. So we'll know if that's ready in just a second, but before we do that, Karen and Jess, any ideas about what might be big areas? If students were thinking about a thing to go into, any sort of tips or suggestions about things that are going to be interesting and get bigger?
Well, I think with the health agenda at the moment, physical activity is huge, isn't it? Particularly with children. So getting more children more active more of the time. So we're already seeing, obviously, the funding going into primary schools. So that's where sports coaching has really taken off in terms of children's coaching and children's activity, and lots of initiatives coming up. So if you're interested, obviously, in coaching or fitness with young children, I think that's certainly an area that we're going to see growth in over the next few years.
For me, if we look at some of the big events, the Olympic Games, Commonwealth Games, things like that, what we find is that increasingly the performance of these athletes at the other end of the scale from the participation, they're supported by a big team, and that team is not just about coaches, but it's about strength and conditioning coaches, it's physiologists, it's physiotherapists, it's sports psychologists, it's nutritionists. So really that multidisciplinary coming at performance from lots of different areas. And I think one of the things that our degree allows students to do is to tap into some of those areas and really to look at actually sport and physical activity is quite a big area, and there are lots of opportunities in that area to really to follow your interests.
Now, I'd like to have a look at this app that you've got, and we are going to show you at home a picture of it on the screen. We may not have time to show all of it because it's about 3 minutes, so we can show as much as you'd like to, but we need to talk people through it because they're going to see it on their screens, and we can see it here as well and tell people about it. Briefly, what's it all about then?
Okay, so what we've been doing is we've been working with KMI at the Open University to develop a more interactive way of learning. So we're using some augmented reality technology to help students learn about the muscular system and the digestive system. So when students come to enrol in our new Level 1 module, to help them learn, they will download an app onto their smartphone or tablets. They point it at a trigger image which generates an augmented reality model of the muscular system, which they can work through, and they can tap on the pins and it will show the muscle, it will tell them the muscle name and the actions that the muscle does. We've also done the same for their digestive system. And what students will be able to do is to work through that, to learn the names of the muscles, and then there's a little self-test at the end, so they can test themselves and see how much information they've retained. And if they've not done too well, they can go back and play with it again. So it's just trying something new and trying something a little bit different to see. Obviously, some students learn differently, so whether this will augmented reality will help. There is also a desktop version available, so for students that don't want to use the augmented reality, that's fine, they don't have to. They can still get a similar experience, but just really for some learners that are more stimulated by visual and kinesthetic learners, that might help a little bit more.
Excellent. That sounds so exciting. And KMI, by the way, is the Knowledge Media Institute, who do lots and lots of very clever things. And of course, at the Open University, we're very interested in how to, encourage the best distance learning experience. And as you say, people learn in different. I love that sort of thing because I like being able to interact and see things over again, and it just helps to make sense of things relationally to me.
We've all enjoyed playing with it in the office, that's for sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Right, that's all we've got time for. We're going to have a little bit more of an exhaustive session about what the Career Service can do generically for students in the next session. But just to end this session then, Ros, in terms of ways that students can connect with your area and the more specialist side of things as well, can you tell us just about the forums, webinars and various points of contact that they can get to from Student Home?
Yes, OK, so if you go onto Student Home, about 2/3 of the way down on the left-hand side, you'll find a link to Careers and Employability Services, and that link will take you to our website. So there's lots of information to help you on the website, with lots of links to professional bodies and to other organisations that you might want to research. But then there's also our webinars are all on that website. And so you can come and join us for live webinars. You can view them, and they sit there for a year after they've been recorded. There's also the opportunity to request individual consultations there. Our forums are on that website too. I think there's one on at the moment, actually open, an access forum. And so, yeah, they're the places. That's the place to go, and that's the link to use to get to the help that we can offer you.
That's wonderful. And we've put those links in the chat as well for you, so you can follow those, and they're also on the resources pages of the Student Hub Live website if you're watching this on Catch Up. Ros, thank you so much for joining us, and Karen and Jess, thank you so much for coming along. It's really interesting, and you guys are off for a run now, aren't you, as part of the OU relay team, so it's good to see practitioners in action. Thank you very much for joining me this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Right, well, that's the end of our first session. Our next session is going to look at business and leadership, so something completely different. But let's have a check-in with HJ and Sophie to see what you've all been talking about and how everybody is.
Yes, it's been lovely. Thank you so much to our advisors in the chat. They've been really helpful. We've had Mark on, who is doing his sports and fitness degree, along with studies, working in the military, with the funding and everything. He says he's got a really good work-study life balance, which is really nice, actually. You'd think it'd be super busy,
Yes.
military and,
Very difficult.
and
Yeah.
studying, but it sounds like it's all going well for him. So good luck, Mark. Let us know how you get on. You have to keep in touch.
Actually, there's quite a few students that are in the military and study with the OU, isn't there? I remember when I went to my graduation, there was quite a few of them had done their degrees and they were graduating in uniform, which was really nice to see. So it's always good to see like a really nice mix of students that you wouldn't normally think would be at a university, but with the OU, it's it's quite mixed. Yeah.
No, it's nice. So good luck. We've got quite a lot of business people as well looking forward to the chat, which is really nice. If you've got any questions for our next session, pop them in the chat and we'll pop them forward as soon as possible. That'd be great.
Yes. Remember to follow at OU_sport on Twitter. We posted it in the chat. They post lots of great things about what they're doing. So things like blog posts, news for OU students. It's always useful to follow their Twitter. And as we said before, if we miss anything from that session that you are raring to know, just email us studenthub@open.ac.uk and we'll get back to you on that one, and we'll make sure our experts will give you well-informed answers.
Yes, so we have actually got one question for our next guest already. I know that they've been helped already in the chat, but Beatrice has said that she is about to finish her business degree, and she's finding it difficult to get an industrial placement due to her age. So she's tried a few supermarkets and things like that. So she would like some advice in this session about some placements and how she can maybe go about that, which is nice. So hopefully our experts can help you out there, Beatrice.
Lovely. How old is Beatrice, Sophie?
I didn't want to ask. It's rude to ask a lady
Because
her age.
It is rude to ask a lady her age, but young or very old or whatever sort of the issue is with the age could be useful, because we've got so many very young students now who are studying with the Open University. So yeah, it's difficult to make assumptions, I guess, about what that is. But Beatrice, you might want to let us know a bit more, and we can certainly ask Marie, who's on with us next in the next session. So we've got lots of students there who are studying business with us, Sophie. Any sort of questions that people have got already, or are they just talking about the morning more generally?
Morning more generally at the moment. I'm surprised that lunch hasn't come into it just yet. So, I mean, we're on 11:15. I assume in the next sort of 20 minutes we'll have some lunchtime discussion. But yeah, if you do have any other questions, any careers, it doesn't necessarily have to be business related, but anything that you've got, pop it in the chat and we will pop it forward to our
We had some people pop in about who are on creative writing. So yeah, any general careers advice, I'm sure all of our guests will be happy to help, because it applies across the board. And we've actually got, on that point, we're actually looking at some creative writing modules later today, some of the new ones that are coming out. So that'll definitely be of interest.